Good evening, everyone. We are going to move forward with tonight's meeting despite the fact that we do not have a quorum for our audit committee. So we may have an abbreviated presentation, however, we do want to go through with our audits. So with that, we will begin the process. Very good. So we'll start with the presentation and introductions if we may, and I'll start first of all with introductions of the folks that are here with us this evening. So I'm Dominic Lisi, I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance. We have Emily Scheib, who is our Assistant School Business Executive. Normally Lori Mudge, our Treasurer, would be here. She could not be here with us this evening. We also have Dwayne Schoen, I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You did.
Excellent. From Insuro Advisors, Mr. Schoen carries our financial audit. We will have, I believe, will Nathan be joining us as well, or just?
No, just
okay. All right, very good. Anthony Velarde will join us online through video conferencing from Questar 3 Proceeds for our internal audit, and Courtney Pacala. I hope I have that right.
I always say Pacala.
All right, very good. Our claims auditor will also join us through the video. Just a quick historical perspective in terms of why we have the audits. We carry out yearly a series of audits, an internal and external audit, also our claims audit. It really started with a series of fiscal accountability issues with New York State schools back in the early 2000s, and it became was legislated as law to start the 5 points audit oversight, which is now education law. And it's also part of our normal practice and policy that we carry out. So I just want to kind of go through those very quickly, just give folks at home an understanding of why we do these and what they are and what role they play within the district. So very quickly, the 5 points of audit oversight. First of all, our claims audit. Basically, that's a continuous pre-audit of all claims and warrants. The purpose of that is to ensure that each payment is lawful, follows our policies and procedures, of course, New York State education law. Second, our internal audit. Internal audit, for lack of a better term, is really our risk assessment. It looks at various aspects of operations within the district to ensure or to see if there are any weaknesses in our financial processes, our operational controls, and as an outcome of that provides recommendations for corrective actions. Our external audit, the third part of the 5 point oversight process, is really what most folks are familiar with. That's our financial audit. It is there to determine, make sure that our statements are accurate, our financial statements. Of course, with all of these, particularly our internal and external audits, they're conducted not only for financial transparency and determine our own processes and systems, but we report to New York State, and these processes then become these reports then become available to the public. The fourth element is our audit committee, which normally would take place this evening. That's typically a 3-member body that provides, again, interfaces with both our internal and external auditors, as well as our claims auditor, and that serves a role to strengthen board oversight, ensure its findings are reviewed, and monitors corrective actions. And last of all, our corrective actions. So these recommendations are then formulated into what we refer to as our corrective actions. It's the work we need to do to make sure that we address anything that would be identified as weakness. Our current internal audit, you're going to hear a little bit more about this evening, so I won't talk too much about that. But again, that is our risk assessment. Again, it's something we do yearly, and results can result in recommendation for a corrective action plan. Just the roles and responsibilities that are associated with each of those. I won't go through this in detail, but just so you have a sense of who plays a role in all of these audit functions. Our Board of Education, of course, they appoint our auditors and approve our audit plans. They review our reports and adopt corrective action plans as identified. Our audit committee reviews reports, meets with auditors, monitors progress. Our claims auditor looks at our purchases to make sure that we're following policy practice in New York education law. And they are hired and answer directly to the Board of Education. Our internal auditor, again, our risk assessor. They evaluate our internal controls, identify risk, and recommend improvements. Our external auditor, and this is an independent body that reviews our financial statements and conducts our financial audits. And the administration, we implement internal controls and ensure that corrective action plans are carried out. And the goal of this ultimately, we want to, this says reinforce public trust, we want to maintain public trust, and, provide fiscal transparency, promote continuous improvement, and protect the district's reputation, and of course, our taxpayers' funds. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll address those, and then we'll move on to, I believe, let's see, who is first here? Yeah,
We're Courtney.
Courtney, very good. Any
If she's on, is Courtney on?
Oh,
If
I'm
she
here.
isn't on, then I told her that we would have Anthony speak first.
I'm here.
Very good. So Anthony's with Quest Reprobosity, and Anthony, if you're on, we'll have you start if that's okay. Actually, I'm just.
Yeah, perfect.
Questions now, or do you want to wait until afterwards? Okay, very good.
Okay, good to go, or?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. You're on.
All right, perfect. Before we get started though, Emily, I sent you an email. Unfortunately, when I saved this document, one of the pages got out of order. It was the letter. It's towards the end of the document. All it does really is explain how basically when we provide our services to districts and BOCES, it's a requirement of the 2005 financial oversight legislation. It's a generic letter that we sent to all districts and BOCES that we service. So with that being said, we completed a timekeeping audit back in May of this year. The audit included evaluating the internal controls and policies administered by the district and conducting field tests to determine how well the district followed existing guidelines and policies. So if you would turn past the cover, you should see a summary regarding our objective and scope as it pertains to the audit. So I make sure we're on the right page here.
We're good.
Yeah, okay. So you'll see the objective and scope as it pertains to the audit. So we conducted field work starting May 19th of this year. It ended on May 23rd. It's originally going to be a payroll audit from all departments, but after further discussion, it was decided to have a focus on the transportation department and their timesheets. With that being said, we reviewed the transportation department's timekeeping process. We compared it to other departments as well, where we did testing on them as well. We specifically reviewed the internal controls in place and any applicable bargaining agreements. We noted 2 observations during our audit, one of which has several sub-items. And we found several issues related to signatures, the counting of hours, rates used, employees being paid during their lunches, and the other issues related to the documentation of bid time. Additionally, we found issues regarding completion and storage of I-9 and IT-2104 forms. Any questions so far?
Oh, can I ask why it was decided to focus so narrowly on transportation? Just a little bit more background on that.
Certainly. So when we originally started doing the audits, it takes I'm there for like a week. And come Wednesday, because how do I put this? Transportation is all timesheets. It's all timesheets. And the contract, they get paid a different way via overtime. And there were several issues that I was seeing timesheets. And so I reviewed these with Emily and Dom, and we looked them over, and it was decided to focus on that mostly because that's where the concern lied.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, perfect. Let's see, where was I? 1 second here. Oh, perfect. If you would turn to page 2, you'll see preliminary details related to the audit. So I interviewed Dominic Lisi, the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Emily Scheib, Assistant School Business Executive, Jessica Hobart, she was a payroll clerk previously, Kenya Alexander, she's the current Administrative Assistant for Transportation, and Latoya McCoy, the previous Admin Assistant for Transportation. We reviewed the district's overall procedures as it relates to timekeeping, determined how effective the process was based on the information provided by them, and through a review of the processes. We selected a sample of 15 bus drivers and focused on 2 separate pay periods to conduct testing. One was from September 29, 23 to October 12th to 23, and the other from March 1st to 24 to March 14th to 24. We tested time cards from these pay periods and recalculated pay based on the hours presented and the applicable bargaining agreement. Additionally, we selected a sample of 20 employees from departments other than transportation to test for completeness of time cards, specifically supervisor signatures. We also tested completeness and accuracy of I-9 and IT-2104 forms for each of the 15 transportation employees. Any questions so far?
Okay, I have one other question about the sampling. What's the population? The 15 represents sample?
So
from
there's 15 single employees. So there's 15 transportation employees, specifically bus drivers, but there's 2 separate time periods. So there's 30 total samples.
Okay, but what's the total population of bus drivers? Like, is the 15 of? It's not a full
Out
sample.
of like a total number, I can look at that. I can give you a
Just to
number.
understand, like 20% sampling
Roughly 70.
plan or 70
70
total? Okay, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Our overall objective with this audit was to ensure that the district's processes are operating effectively and efficiently, and to ensure records are being properly stored. We noted key program objectives to the district as well. So the transportation department, they use manual time cards to account for hours worked. These are completed by employees and submitted via a Dropbox at the department. The admin assistant for transportation is responsible for collecting and reviewing every time card. From here, she'll input the information to a Google spreadsheet shared by transportation and payroll. Payroll will then enter this information into the payroll system. Other key controls to note here is the administrative assistant's usage of Zonar to account for bus usage and the documentation of bid times in September and October of each year. On page 3, we'll have our first observation. This is a multi-part observation, so I've condensed it here for organizational purposes. So during fieldwork pertaining to the transportation department's timekeeping processes, we found that none of the time cards had signature approval from a supervisor. Should be noted in testing time cards from other departments, we found that every one of them contained signed approval from a supervisor. We also found that 3 of the time cards from sampled employees were overpaid, 3 were underpaid, and that 1 of the time cards was illegible and should not have been paid. Additionally, we found that there was no formal bid time documentation for 2 transportation department employees, meaning that 2 employees started after the second meeting in October and didn't have their bid time documented anywhere. There was also an instance where the incorrect rate was used for an entire week's pay for an employee who changed roles from bus driver trainee to bus driver during the week. We also found one instance where a time card was submitted 2 months late, and another instance where an employee was paid hourly wages of 7.5 hours without any supporting documentation, and also 6 instances where employees were paid during their scheduled lunch. Lastly, we found there was no review of time cards on behalf of the business office. The payroll clerk would assume that the information received was correct and would only focus on input. Any questions here? No? Okay. So we recommend that the district transition from manual time cards to an electronic timekeeping system to mitigate potential errors, promote timeliness, and enforce the requirement of supervisor approval. But it would also allow for timely review on behalf of the business office and ensure an overall improvement to the documentation process regarding bid hours. In the meantime, the district should focus on requiring supervisor sign-off on manual time cards, formally documented bid times, and a secondary review of all payroll calculations to minimize potential errors. Any questions there? No? Okay, perfect. And our second observation pertained to the review of I-9 and IT-2104 documentation. We found 1 instance where an I-9 wasn't signed by an employee, 2 instances where IT-2104 forms were not signed by the district, 2 instances where IT-2104 forms cannot be found. For our recommendation, we recommend that the district strengthen its record-keeping processes to ensure all required employment documentation is complete and accurate. There should be a checklist implemented in addition to a review process for new hires to confirm completion, receipt, and storage of this documentation. Any questions? No? Okay. So that's the audit portion. We're all set with that. We can move on to the risk assessment if you guys are ready.
Sure, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. As for the risk assessment, we completed that back in March of this year. If you turn past the cover, you'll find a generic letter that we sent to all district and BOCES that we service, explaining the purpose of the risk assessment, how it's a requirement of 2005 financial oversight legislation, so on and so forth. It's a similar letter that you would see on the audit. If you turn to page 1, you'll find a list of inherent risks. This is a generic listing of inherent risks that are found in each district that we service. We have our recommendations detailed on the right. This section is a part of every report that we issue. At the bottom of the page, you will find audits that we've completed in prior years, and I'll have that list updated to reflect the most recent audit once we issue the final report. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So if you turn to page 3, you'll find a chart that showcases various functional areas throughout the district, our prior and current year classifications for these areas, and any applicable comments to the items that have seen changes between prior and current years. Our first comment is related to the lunch program cash. We found that startup funds are not being approved by the board. For extra classroom cash, we found that clubs with no financial activity are still active, and that the review of meeting minutes has been inconsistent for accounts receivable. specifically special education and Medicaid. We made a comment regarding how entering session notes late can have a negative impact on the district receiving payment. For payroll, we found that staff aren't timely with sending timesheets to the payroll department. For purchasing, we based our comment on the assistant superintendent for business approving purchase orders. He didn't receive board approval yet. He was newly hired at that time, so it's understandable. The approval wasn't granted until March 25th. For human resources, we noted outdated collective bargaining agreements, employee resignations and terminations not being reported to HR timely. And the absence of a written operational procedure regarding HR is also absent. We'll go into detail on each of those in the later pages. Any questions so far?
So I had a quick question. For two of these, the risk went down in the current year compared to the prior year, and I just don't have enough background to understand why. So could you provide, like, briefly explain what changed about fixed assets and information systems?
So
risk went down?
certainly, yeah. So that'll be towards the end of the presentation. Those have to do with the cleared comments.
Okay, I can wait then. Maybe I just missed it.
No problem. It's okay. I apologize. I should have went over those as well. Basically, because once I get towards the end, let me see here. So the prior issue was acceptable use agreements. Those weren't being enforced by the district. District is now enforcing a paper form that needs to be signed annually, so that reduced the risk there. Next, it was had to do with transportation. They were allowing mechanics to work on their personal vehicles. The district's no longer allowing that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, perfect. So if you return to page 5, you'll find our comments and recommendations for prior year risk assessments. The most recent update regarding each issue can be found underneath the respective comment and recommendation. I'll briefly review the ones that have an update or change as of this year. If you would turn to page 6, you will find a comment regarding transportation inventory controls. Our observation pertains to the transportation department not having a formal parts inventory program. And we found this year that the department is currently in the process of implementing TransFinder as its perpetual inventory system. It was anticipated to be completed over last summer. We'll go ahead and update that for 25-26 once we visit there again, if it's been implemented. If you turn to page 7, you'll find another comment related to the same process. We found previously that the transportation department's room for storing parts and supplies was not being properly safeguarded. We've updated this comment this year to reflect that a fence was installed outside the parts room because there's a garage door and it leads outside where extra items are stored. But we've also noted that none of the cameras are working properly. If you would turn to page 11, we have a comment regarding the district's child nutrition program. We had a previous comment from 23 regarding expenditures in excess of revenues. For the year ending June 30th, 24, we found that the district had food service expenditures of $622,072 in excess of revenues. Any questions so far? No? Okay, perfect. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
No? Okay, perfect. So if you would turn to page 13, you'll find our issues identified in the current year. For child nutrition, we found that the amount of startup cash funds was missing from the approved reorg minutes. This amount should be approved by the board annually. For extra classroom activities, we found that clubs are not consistent with delivering meeting minutes to the central treasurers for review. Additionally, the treasurers are not reviewing the minutes regularly. Clubs should be delivering these timely, and they should be reviewed by the central treasurers upon receipt. Additionally, we found that the district had 4 high school clubs, 5 Boynton middle school clubs, and 2 LACS clubs that were still active, even though they had no financial activity for the year ending June 30th, 24. The district should remove clubs with no activity from the extra classroom activity fund. For human resources, we found that the collective bargaining agreements for both the educational support professionals and the Substitutes Association have expired as of June 2024. The district should prioritize negotiations regarding these agreements and finalize them to ensure timely renewals. Additionally, regarding HR, we found that employee terminations, resignations are not consistently reported to HR in a timely manner. There was one instance that was noted during the risk assessment where an employee continued to receive pay for several months after leaving the district due to late notification. We recommend that the district implement a process for reporting all terminated and resigned employees to HR in a timely manner. Lastly, for HR, we found that there's no operational procedure regarding the onboarding and attendance process. There should be a procedure regarding these processes that outlines the responsibilities and the steps that need to be taken. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So for operations and maintenance, we found that there isn't anyone cross-trained to handle the facilities admin assistance role. That involves billing procedures, fielding various questions, so on and so forth. We recommend that the district cross-train at least one employee to ensure continuity on these functions. For payroll, we found that numerous staff are not timely with sending timesheets to the payroll department for processing. We also noted the absence of signatures on behalf of the transportation department after our findings in the audit. These timesheets should be sent timely, and the deadline should be communicated across all departments, and every timesheet should be signed by a supervisor. For purchasing, we found the assistant superintendent for business had the ability to approve purchase orders without formal board approval. We recommend that the board should formally approve all individuals who are responsible for the approval of purchase orders. And lastly, for special education, we found that there are district personnel who enter session notes late. This can lead to the district not receiving payment. We recommend that the district implement procedures to ensure session notes are completed and entered on a timely manner. Deadlines should be established in addition to periodic reviews to ensure that these are entered timely. Any questions here? No? Okay, perfect. Lastly, just to indicate where those cleared comments are that you questioned, we have one on page 18. That's the one with the acceptable use agreements when signing into the district's network. Previously, the district didn't require this, even though it was part of policy. This year, we found that the district is now requiring this via paper document annually. Next, it's on page 17, I believe, if I have that page right. Let me double check here. Give me 1 second. Let's see here. Page 17. It's not page 17. I apologize. One moment. Page 27. Typo on my end. Okay. So page 27, regarding transportation, we noted previously the district allowed mechanics to work in their personal vehicles in the transportation garage. This is no longer allowable after interviewing during the risk assessment. So this concludes this portion of the presentation as well. Any other questions?
No, I think we're set.
Okay. All set? Okay. All right, perfect. With that said, once I receive a corrective action plan, I'll go ahead and have that signed off by my manager. And then we can go ahead and forward the final report to you for both the risk assessment and the audit. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
You as well.
Courtney's on, and she's co-host, but she said that she can't give her able to speak, but she can control her microphone. She can control her what? Her microphone, but she is a co-host, so she's able to turn on her mic.
Well, can anybody hear me right now?
We can, yeah.
Okay. I was saying stuff before and nobody was reacting, so I was like, maybe it's not working.
All right, great.
Oh, that's okay. So how is everybody today?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Do you have the quarterly up in front of you?
Yes, I think we have a paper copy. You guys
Perfect.
want- Okay.
I think we're all set.
Perfect. So this quarter was one that we mostly saw the usual PO after invoice. We didn't have anything major sticking out besides our after invoices, and then a couple of teachers that wanted reimbursement for items that were shipped to their house. Beyond that, we didn't have any other issues to discuss today. Does anybody have questions about those two issues?
No, I think we're good there.
Take forward.
Um,
Is it worth the wait, Courtney?
It was a pretty easy quarter. Everything was pretty smooth. I mean, it's hard to get rid of all the PO afters, but we've definitely decreased them in the past few years. But yeah, I was happy to see that that was our only real issue throughout the quarter.
Great. Thank you very much. Just for a matter of point of order, Courtney is our claims author. Thanks, Courtney.
No problem. Have a good day.
You as well.
Thank you, Courtney.
So, Dwayne, you're on.
All right,
All right.
terrific. Well, thank you. So, thank you for a few minutes of the meeting this evening to review the results of the external audit. I want to start by thanking Emily for sure, Lori, Dominic, everybody at the district. There is a lot of work that goes into this. A lot of information, a lot of requests, a lot of documents, flying back and forth. And we are close to the finish line, so that's certainly good news. I'm going to talk mostly from the executive summary that you have in front of you, and then I'll touch on some of the details and highlights in the other documents as we go through. So I want to start on page 2 of the executive summary, and this just mentions some of the overall audit reports that we're issuing. We're issuing, the technical term is unmodified opinion. It's a clean opinion. It's the kind of opinion you want to get. So we're issuing an unmodified opinion on the financial statement, as well as on the district's internal control and compliance in accordance with government auditing standards. You see the last bullet on page 2 mentions what's commonly called the single audit. The technical term is the uniform guidance, which is federal regulations. And because the Office of Management and Budget is not yet released, the 2025 compliance supplement, we're not able to issue those single audit reports. We have, our firm has traditionally put them all together, issued them all at once, even though those uniform guidance reports aren't actually required to be submitted until March, till 9 months after year end. And because we don't have those, we can't issue them. So for, this year, we're going to start separating our report issuances. You'll receive the regular financial statements, the government auditing standards report in time for the 15th. And then the uniform guidance reports, once we get the supplement, we have a chance to review it and make sure that there aren't any changes. They've sent out 2 draft versions so far. They said the final was going to be issued in May. It's no longer May, and it's still not out. But anyway, so that's where we are with that. Page 3 of the executive summary mentions some of the other letters that are part of the audit process. We have a management comment letter, which doesn't have any current issues, and I'm happy to report has one resolved issue. There was a comment in the last couple of years about accounts payable and capital projects fund was the way it was being accounted for wasn't correct a couple of years in a row, but that was fixed for June 30, 2025. And then there is a report and a comment letter related to the extracurricular activity fund. The report has an unmodified opinion. The comment letter has several comments in it, many of the same comments that we've had in the past. A lot of receipt documentation, a lot of disbursement documentation. Some clubs in there that don't seem like bona fide clubs. So there are, a number of comments in that comment letter. And again, similar to what we've had in the past. Page 4 of the executive summary notes one more letter that's part of the audit process. We call it the communication letter. Auditing standards require that we communicate certain aspects of the audit with you at the conclusion, and that's what that letter does. It's pretty much boilerplate language. There is reference in there. There were a couple of new accounting standards adopted. And when we look at the financial statements, you'll see those. There was a couple of corrected misstatements that are mentioned in that communication letter as well. But pretty much the letter is boilerplate language. Page 5 and 6 of the executive summary give you some overall perspective. So these 2 pages are not fund-based. These are the district as a whole. And these give you just kind of a pie chart to let you know kind of where the money comes from and where the money goes. The chart on page 5 shows the sources of revenue by broad category. And you can see these numbers tend not to change too much from one year to the next. The district is roughly 2/3 funded by property taxes and tax items. A little more than 20% from state sources. And then operating grants and other revenues bring in the rest. And I did notice this evening when I was looking at this, that the revenue is 101%. So that's good. You're actually bringing in more revenue than I'll fix that before we find that. And then on page 6, the same kind of pie chart related to expenses. You can see roughly 3/4 of the district's total expenses are categorized by instruction. About 13-14% each year on general support, and then transportation about 7%, and then other is the rest. Other includes community services, includes interest on debt, any other categories. Beginning on page 7 of the executive summary are several pages with some trend information concerning the general fund, mostly. And so I wanted to kind of just go over some of the highlights of those. On page 7, you'll note that the general fund assets ended the year at a shade under $53 million, which was an increase of about $3.4 million from the year prior. That increase is pretty much all cash and investments. Cash and investments increased from about $35.6 million in 2024 to $38.9 million at the end of the current year. Receivables were down a little bit, due from other funds, which is just all the different funds and owing each other money was up a little bit. Those two things kind of cancel each other out. The bottom half of page 7 shows the liabilities and deferred inflows in the general fund. And in total, liabilities decreased by about $1.1 million, mostly in that due to other funds category, which went from $3.3 million down to 2.1. The other numbers in there are pretty stable from year to year. So assets grew, liabilities dropped a little bit. And so the net result of that on page 8 is that fund balance increased in total about 4.4, almost $4.5 million, from 34.8 million up to 39.2. Most of that increase is restricted, so all the different reserves, which we'll look at in a couple of slides, the reserves in total increased about $4.9 million in total. The assigned fund balance, which includes encumbered funds and also includes monies that are appropriated to balance the 25-26 budget, declined about $600,000, and the unassigned category of fund balance increased about $200,000. The unassigned fund balance by state law is limited to 4% of next year's budget, and in a couple of slides we'll see that you were within that 4% limitation. The bottom of page 8 shows the revenues for the general fund. The revenues in total increased about $4.8 million from $156 million to $160.8 million. Most of that increase is real property taxes. You can see the property tax line increased about $4.1 million. State sources actually declined a little bit, and then other revenue refunds from BOCES, things like that, increased a little bit as well. Page 9 shows the expenditures for the general fund. And the expenditures increased in total about $1.2 million from $155.1 million to $156.3 million. And if you look at the detail, you can see general support pretty flat, actually down a little bit, instruction down a little bit. Employee benefits was up a little bit, and the interfund transfers was up a little bit because you sent more money over to capital projects fund this year compared to last. Bottom of page 9 shows some of the other governmental funds. Capital outlay for the year was $19.8 million, all the capital projects that are ongoing. The special aid fund showed about $9.2 million in revenues and expenditures. So the special aid fund, generally speaking, has no fund balance because it's all grant funded, and until you earn the revenue from the grant by spending the money, you don't have the revenue. So the revenues and the expenditures typically offset there. And then the school lunch fund had a little bit of an increase in fund balance. Revenues increased to 3.5 million, expenditures increased to 3.3 million. Page 10 of the executive summary shows all the different categories of fund balance. And you can see the top half of this spreadsheet shows all the restricted funds, all the reserves. In total, restricted fund balance is about $21.2 million. I'll note that we do look at each of those reserves for reasonableness, for making sure that they are within best practice, within state law, within those guidelines, and all of those reserve funds are within the guidelines that are established. So, none of those are more than they should be. I'll put in quotes. Assigned fund balance, again, the appropriated for next year's budget and all the encumbrances. And then the unassigned fund balance is the remaining amount. Page 11 of the executive summary shows that calculation, the 4% rule. So the current year's budget is $169 million and change. So the maximum allowed is 4% of that, which is $6,761,000. The district's unassigned fund balance is $6,505,000. So you're at 3.85%. You can see pretty stable, within the 3.7, 3.8 the last 4 years, including this one. Page 12 shows the activity for all those reserve funds. And so you can see the beginning balance, 16.3 million. The district added almost $7.7 million to all the different reserves in total. Interest was a little bit more than $500,000. And then roughly $3.3 million was appropriated from the reserves to get to that ending balance of 21.2 million. Page 13 and 14 show very summarized budget comparison schedules. The 24-25 year is on page 13, and then the year prior is on the next page. If you look at the 24-25 budget, you'll see that the district had revenues that exceeded the final budget by about $6.3 million in total. So about 4% more than budgeted came in on the revenue side. And then on the expenditure side, the district was below the final budget by almost $9 million or 5.3%. And both those numbers are a little bit higher than they were a year ago. So you look at the next page, the revenue excess over the budget was a little less than 4%. And the expenditures below the final budget was about 2.1%. And then page 15 shows the net position analysis. So this is government-wide, not just general fund. And this shows the total net position of the district. And you can see, if you look at this, the unrestricted net position is a big, scary negative number. And it is a big, scary negative number primarily because the district's retiree health insurance obligation is recorded in the government-wide financial statement. But there is no asset and there is no mechanism to create an asset to offset that liability. It's simply something that is paid out over the next 30, 40 years as current employees retire, receive benefits. So there is no asset because there isn't the ability to create one. So on this schedule, we show you what the net position would be if those unallowable, if you will, liabilities weren't recorded. And you can see at the very bottom of this analysis that if there wasn't a pension obligation recorded, and if there wasn't a retiree health insurance obligation recorded, the district would have a positive net position of about $8 million at the end. Page 16 of the executive summary just mentions the status of some new accounting standards. Again, I mentioned a statement on compensated absences was adopted this year. So there is a restatement footnote towards the back of the financial statements. Regarding that, there's also a note on risk disclosures. And then there are a couple upcoming statement changes that will be effective next year. Any questions on the executive summary? If not, I'll dig a little bit into the highlights of some of the other documents. So I mentioned the management comment letter. I mentioned there was one finding that we've had the last couple of years that was resolved this year. A year ago, accounts payable and capital projects fund was about $3.2 million over what it should have been. There were some encumbrances that were recorded as accounts payable and not encumbrances in capital projects fund, and so that issue was corrected for this year, so no longer a finding. So we didn't have any findings, so that's good. I also mentioned that communication letter. And again, that letter mentions those new standards that were effective this year on first page, and then on the very last page of that, there was a schedule of corrected misstatements. A couple things in the self-insurance fund that were adjusted during the audit process. I did want to touch on a couple things in the financial report itself. I'll mention if you're not going to read through the whole 80-page document, I wouldn't be surprised. I won't be offended if you don't read it. But if nothing else, I'd encourage you to read through that management's discussion and analysis section, which begins on page 5, this through page 5H. It's a nice narrative format. It's got some nice charts and graphs that are helpful, but it gives you a very top level, very summarized sense of where the district is financially without going into a lot of heavy detail. The financial statements themselves begin on page 6, and page 6 through 8 are the government-wide statements. So those include all of the funds together, includes the capital assets of the district, and then includes all the district's debt, compensated absences, pension obligation, retiree health insurance obligation. And so all of that is included there. And then the fund level statements follow it. So the fund level statements begin on page 9 and continue for the next several pages. The internal service fund, which is page 13 through 15, is the district's health insurance fund. And so you can see they're pretty stable in terms of the overall net position, declined about $50,000 from $1,516,000 down to $1,466,000. The district also has health insurance reserve in the general fund, in addition to that net position in the health insurance fund. And then I wanted to skip ahead a bit in the financial statements and turn to a couple of the notes that I wanted to point to. So page 34 of the financial report shows capital asset activity for the district. You can see the left-hand column, the beginning balance had a net value of $187.6 million, including construction in progress, buildings, equipment. You can see the district added about $19.2 million to construction in progress. Added a little bit to buildings, added about $2.2 million in equipment additions during the year. So total additions were $21.8 million. Depreciation and amortization expense was about $7.7 million. And so on a net basis, the district's net value for capital assets increased a little more than $14 million during the year. Beginning on page 36 and continuing a couple of pages is information about the debt, the long-term debt that the district has. A total of $70 million in bonds outstanding as of June 30, 2025. And then at the very bottom of page 38 is a chart that shows the payoff of those bonds over time, all the way out to 2039 when the last bond is scheduled to be paid. The notes on the pension obligation and the retiree health insurance obligation are note 11 and note 12 respectively. You can see there's a lot of information in there. I did want to point to one place at the very bottom of page 47. So both systems that the state or that the district participates in, the ERS, Employee Retirement System, and TRS, Teachers Retirement System, are annually actuarially determined at the state level. And then the district has a small percentage component of that overall statewide liability. So the numbers at the bottom of page 47, those are the statewide numbers. And so you can see that the ERS system had a total actuarially estimated liability of $247.6 billion and had total assets, cash investments of $230.4 billion. So a net liability at the state level of $17.1 billion. Your share of that, which is reported in the government-wide financial statements, is about 9.3 million. And then on the TRS side, TRS is actually funded more than 100%. So assets exceeded the actuarially determined liability. The total assets of the plan was $145.8 billion. The total liability was 142.8. So about $3 billion excess of asset over liability. And your share of that net pension asset was $7.6 million. There are some charts towards the back providing some historical information about the pension obligation, about the retiree health insurance obligation, and those are all back there as well. And I think that's all I wanted to cover in the financial statement. And then the last thing that you have is the extra classroom activity fund. And again, in total, across all 4 buildings that have funds, there was about $328,000 in cash at the end of the year. You can see on page 3 the breakdown by buildings. So the high school had about $165,000 in cash. LACS had about $58,000. Boynton had $71,000 and DeWitt had $35,000 at the end of the year. And then behind that schedule is a list of all the receipts, disbursements for each club within each of those buildings. So there's several pages there showing all the clubs. And then the comment letter, as I mentioned, has a lot of comments related to each of the buildings and some things that were found during the audit. Again, those things have been pretty stable in terms of overall types of findings. The numbers, some years they go up, some years they go down. But the types of findings that are in there are pretty similar from what they've been in the past. With that, I'll open it up to any other questions anybody might have.
Maybe last time.
A lot of information.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your
Terrific.
time.
Okay,
Excellent.
all right,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay.
So we can't formally close the meeting, so I think we're essentially done unless there's any questions or comments or anything you'd like to add. No?
I
You're
did
in.
read the whole thing.
You're right. Very good, very good. And with that, I think we'll close. All right, thank you so much.
So, an unresolved